I'm making this recording for Lily Lambert at the request of her mother, Amy Jane Burke, who asked me to tell Lily stories about her family. And since her birthday is imminent, this seems like an opportunity to do just that. And I'll tell you what the inspiration for the story was. There is a book called Remembrance of Things Past. It's an English translation. It's a very long book. It contains, I think, 6 parts, and altogether they're over 2,000 pages long. And each page is filled with very small print, and the paragraphs go on forever. And the whole book is about this guy just thinking about his past mostly. And it starts off when he is a young boy and he doesn't want to be sent to his room to sleep alone. And ultimately his mother comes to spend the night with him. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. The famous part is when he eats a cookie called a Madeleine, and that inspires all kinds of recollections. Well, the same thing happened to me. That's the point I'm getting to. I was shaving, and as I was shaving, I thought about the razor in my hand and how good it was, how sharp it was. It's just a cheap throwaway razor, and it reminded me that when I was a boy, the only razors that were available were called, the only razors that I knew about were called Gillette Blue Blades. And they were sharp, supposedly, but they were kind of fragile, and you only used them once, and then you threw them away. The ones we have today, you can use maybe 10, 20 times before you have to throw them away, and they probably cost less than a Gillette Blue Blade. As I was thinking about Gillette Blue Blades, I thought about the Gillette Blue Blade boxing matches, prize fights that were on television every Wednesday night, and that made me think of my grandfather, James Hudson Burke, who used to come to our house every Wednesday night. We'd have dinner. Often we would work on my spelling, which was horrible. And then with my dad, we would watch the Wednesday night fights, which were sponsored by Gillette Blue Blade. So you see how this is all happening. I'm shaving, I'm thinking of my razor, and then I think of Gillette Blue Blades, and that causes me to think of my grandfather coming on Wednesday nights to have dinner and watch the Wednesday night Gillette Blue Blade fights. He came on Wednesday nights because my grandmother, Edna Taylor Burke, would go to her sister's house to play cards on Wednesday. And they were a big card-playing family, and they were a big family. My grandmother, Edna, was the 12th of 13 children, if you can imagine that. And most of her brothers and sisters stayed in Oakland. The ones that didn't get married lived in a big house. I never saw it, but my dad said that there was always people in the house, that the men, the brothers, all had jobs, and when they got paid, they gave their money to the boss, who I think was Emma Burke, Emma Taylor, and she'd pay for the house and the food, and there was always a big pot of thick soup on the stove, so whenever anybody wanted a meal at other than the regular times, they could just go to the big pot and ladle out a bowl, and there you have it. So, in any event, Grandpa was at 250 LaSalle with me and my parents. Now, at that time, he was the chief of the Oakland Fire Department, so when he came in the evening, he came from work. He didn't wear a uniform to work. He wore a regular suit, coat and tie, and he was driven in a red fire car by his driver, whose name was can't remember. It's like Junie, but it's not. Junie was my father's driver. In any event, he'd be dropped off in the red fire car, and then he would be picked up at the end of the evening and driven home. When he got into our house, and this is the same house that Bruce lives in now, he'd go immediately to the hall closet, wherein he kept a dark navy blue sweater on a hanger, and he'd take off his suit jacket and he'd put on this sweater. He wouldn't roll up his sleeves, and he didn't take off his tie, but he just switched his coat, his formal suit jacket, to this woolen sweater. And what I remember about the sweater is it was very cheap, and it was very rough. And my mother, on numerous occasions, would say, "Jimmy, let us buy you a nicer sweater." And he'd say something and like, "This is good enough, this is what I want." So let's talk about, for a second, where he came from. He was the son of a man by the name of Bernard Burke and Bernard's wife, Olivia Hudson Burke. Bernard and Olivia were both Irish, and they came from Ireland. Bernard came first. He and Olivia were boyfriend and girlfriend. What we think is that one was a Catholic and one might have been a Protestant, and that didn't work very well in Ireland. And Bernard, either for that reason or for some other reason, got into a fight with Olivia's husband and threw Olivia's husband into the ditch. Every time I heard the story, Bernard or Olivia's dad got thrown into not a ditch, but the ditch. We have no idea where the ditch was, don't know anything about it. We don't know how big it was, but we know that the old man got thrown into it, and then Bernard ran away to the New World, by which we mean the United States.